last night, real quick, before we jump on past that, we were just talking about it before the break. Wins, loss, who cares about that? None of that matters. But give me anything that you did take out of that, and what's your outlook here heading in? We'll talk Pittsburgh specific next year. Obviously, nobody's building a Super Bowl float here, but, I do believe that at least last night, here, let me start with this. I thought that you could see the difference once they picked somebody as their quarterback and everybody had spent a week and a half practicing together every single day. I know they had backups in there, so I don't care about going 80 yards on the drive, but you could see continuity for once between the players.
Well, I hope you're right. I don't know that's the case. I think that we've seen this before, I think, quite honestly. We have seen cases where the Browns have gone out and just look abysmal and just have spit the bit throughout the preseason, and then they kind of don't look quite as bad in the last game, and we kind of, okay, here's the problem, we fixed it, problem solved, we're ready to go. And then the season starts and we're right back where we started from because because you're seeing things in that last preseason game, you're seeing, like you said, they're playing second stringers. No, the primary purpose, and for all teams, not just the teams that the Browns are playing, but the primary purpose of the last preseason game is not to get hurt. It really isn't. There's a handful of guys who are still fighting for a job, and I get that. But for the most part, especially for the first string, it's just get out there, break a sweat, don't kill yourself, don't get hurt. And so whatever results you see in that last game, whether they be good or bad, are oftentimes misleading. So we kind of got to keep that in mind. I'd like to think that it has something to do with, they picked the quarterback, and that sad little chapter is behind us for the moment. But I don't know that is the case. But be that as it may, it was better to see them score more points than an opposing team for a change. That was nice. That's always nice on any level with whatever the stakes are. That's always good to see. So it's certainly a step ahead of where they were last week. But again, you look at that third preseason game is usually the indicator of what you're going to see when the sparks start to fly. So that's still ringing very loudly in my ears, much louder than whatever we saw last night.
Well, mine too, especially on the defensive side of the ball. My thing is that, unfortunately, I think it's hard to judge offensively until you get into Pittsburgh here and we get into the real season. How do you look at that third preseason game? Because was the dysfunction a function of the whole thing, or was it a function of being split for too long before you started getting the team on the get ready for the regular season track? Because even taking Manziel and Hoyer out of the way, with a rookie head coach, that's always a line that gets walked with getting your starters ready, but getting opportunities for the other guys, checking out the rookies, mixing them in with the starters, even when you don't have a high-level guy with a name like Manziel as part of your distractions. So that's always one of the balancing acts of preseason for a rookie coach. So, part of me wonders if that just wasn't it, if it was given too much time, not just for Manziel, but for everybody, too much time before we circled the wagons and said, okay, that was fun. Now we got some tape on you. But now we start getting ready for the regular season. I just think they waited a week or two too long to start getting into that mindset. And that doesn't change the fact that I think this is a 6-10 team with everything that I've seen, and that's if everything goes relatively well this season. So I'm not sitting here giving you, blowing smoke. That's my thoughts anyway, but that's why I can't really tell what you saw with that third game there.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that we're perpetually in the mode of a first-year coach settling into things in the preseason. This is just something we deal with basically every single year. So we don't know what a cohesive preseason looks like. I mean, you really have to go back to at least the Belichick years, if not back to the 80s, before you saw a team that went into the Marty, really. You saw a team that had a system in place, that just had everything running as a machine going into the preseason, and you're just swapping parts out. It's just a mess. This is just perpetually, at this time of year, is a mess for the Browns. So it's difficult to tell the difference between, is this a mess because everybody's new and it's a new system and people are adjusting, or is it a mess because this forthcoming season is going to be a mess? Time shall tell.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I'm intrigued for the opening day. I haven't made any solid predictions because I'm like, man, I got to see a game where it matters. And even then, you don't judge a season on the first game, but you can get a pretty good glimpse at the at least the way the first part of it's going to go. And
Yeah.
so, you know what I'm saying? I gotta see that, because you really do. Then it's everything's out and exposed, and you go, okay, this is just going to be really bad, or okay, it's going to be up and down like we thought. And but again, looking at what I saw, believe it or not, I'm more worried about the defense than I am about the offense. I know that sounds crazy.
Sure.
I'm worried about the offense because they don't have a number 1 wide receiver. I'm worried about the defense because they can't stop the number 3 quarterback on the other team.
Yeah, and that's something that I think became very apparent last week, and that's something that we did not count on. We expected, the offense is going to be a mess, but the defense will hang in there, and it'll be similar to last year, where at least in the beginning part of the season, that the defense will be able to keep them in games. But after what we saw, certainly 2 weeks ago, or last week, and to some extent a little bit last night, I don't know that we can feel that way anymore. I mean, who's going to carry the team? If the defense isn't, we're looking at the punting game? I mean, what is it that's going to be the strong suit of this team while, as you said, everyone kind of gets their sea legs and tries to figure this out? I don't know that there's going to be anything you can lean on. So that more so than whatever problems the offense was having, especially against St. Louis, that the defense just could not get off the field. That was very disturbing, and I'm afraid that it's showing us that we were maybe overestimating how good the defense was going to be, that we were a little too optimistic, and that, there's really not going to be much to hang your hat on. This is going to be kind of a blind shoot here these first few weeks to see what the personality, what the identity of this team's going to be.
Well, I'll tell you what, too, last night, and again, last night is not the best way to judge. I did like that they, for the first time all preseason, made an effort and got some pressure on the quarterback. And not consistently, but more consistently than they have. They were in there. Markevius Mingo flashed a little bit last night where I jumped out of my chair on one and said, that's the guy that you draft number 6 in the draft, man. Dude, eat another quarterback when we start the season. Do that for real, and we've got something there. So they did show me some of that, but how much do you look at the defensive backs? I mean, because this is true. When you're missing number 1 and number 2 and number 4 of your top 4, you're not playing 1, 2, and 4. How much can you judge the back end of the defense? Because there is, even if you don't think Joe Hayden is locked down, there's a difference between Joe Hayden and Justin Gilbert, and a big difference between Justin Gilbert and Leon McFadden, who hopefully never wears a Cleveland Browns jersey again. I'm sorry, I have no use for Leon McFadden on my football team whatsoever. But unless we need somebody to commit pass interference, then he's your guy. I mean,
he's your guy.
That's your designated pass interferer.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it really is, and not just for the defense and not just for the secondary, but I think that the recurring problem the Browns have had, not just this year, not just in recent years, but certainly since they've been back, has been their lack of depth. So, we say, the Browns are terrible, or the Browns had a bad game last week because so-and-so was out and they had to play their backups, and that's exactly it. They have never, ever been able to build depth. And that's part of the problem with firing and rehiring coaches every other year, is that you don't get a chance to ever build any kind of depth. If you're lucky, you get a passable first team that you're able to put on the field. So if everybody's healthy and all the stars align, you get 22 guys. It's okay, this is acceptable. But the minute one of those guys goes down, you're screwed. This is what has haunted the Browns, because inevitably this is going to happen. You're not going to go through a season with all of your key guys staying healthy. I mean, let's just face it, that's just not going to happen. At some point, somebody's going to go down and somebody's going to have to step in, and that's what defines what kind of team you are. That defines what kind of season you're going to have. Whether it's your quarterback, obviously that's the big thing. You're always worried about your quarterback going down. But in this case, like you said, it's just in something that's often overlooked, like the defensive secondary. You have a couple guys go down, who's going to step in? If you don't have the talent to step in for that first team, you're in trouble. It doesn't matter how good your first team is. It's more about how good your second team is. That's the difference between playoff teams and teams that perpetually don't make the playoffs. So I'm afraid that that's what we're seeing, because we're going to see, once again, once the bullet starts to fly, guys are going to start to go down, and there's not going to be adequate talent to step in for them.
I just mentioned the other day on the show that on top of watching this team grow over the next few years, there's a difference between talking about a team that could win 8 or maybe even 9 or 10 games. A lot of teams can do that every year and get a playoff spot. That's not a Super Bowl contender. That's not a championship contender. That's just the ins and outs of a football season. But to get to that Super Bowl level, I said, I know he may have made a mistake with not getting a wide receiver. I'm not saying he's perfect, but Ray Farmer drafted pretty well this year. It's going to take 2 or 3 more deep drafts like that to build not the stars, not to go find your next Johnny Football or your big flashy quarterback. Yes, that's important too, but it's to build the second level of the Browns that they don't have right now, because I do believe that he drafts well. He may not be the best, but he drafts better than our drafting for the last 20 years. So I think that if you give him a couple of drafts...
We'll see. I think it's too early to make that claim, but we shall see.
I mean, as far as drafting smart, tough football players, not just... we've had drafts lately where guys don't play. Guys don't make the team right off the bat. Like, man, we drafted that guy, man? Like, I didn't even... So I'm saying he seems to... the results are early, but, the guys he grabbed in the middle rounds, he's looked like he grabbed some starters out there. I know West is shaky as a rookie, but Tonio Kirksey may win Defensive Rookie of the Year this season, man, if he continues to improve. He in college was a beast. I don't know how much you knew about Christian Kirksey, but, man, that was one of the draft picks that excited me the most.
Well, we'll just have to. I don't disagree with you necessarily, but I think that, and it's a good point, that there have been guys that their own regime has drafted. A regime drafts guys and then can't even put them on their own team. That's a very bad sign if things aren't going well.
Yes.
But we have to keep in mind too that there may be this guy is going to start. There may be blowing smoke up our skirts a little bit. That we drafted this guy. We know what we're doing. We see things that you don't see yet. And we may be hearing things and seeing things that aren't quite real. So, definitely we got to wait till things get rolling for real. It's too soon to really judge Farmer's drafting prowess based on a couple of preseason games. But once the bullets start to fly, I think we will get a better idea. Certainly over the course of this season, I think we'll get an idea if at least he's been able to do, as you said, build some of that depth, get some of those building blocks that the Browns have been miserable at accumulating the last couple of years.
And hopefully we'll get a look, too, in a sense. Early on, it feels like maybe he may have got at least a couple of undrafted guys that don't just make the roster, that may be a part of this team. I have been enticed by Isaiah Crowell since the day the Browns got him. I said they got him undrafted. That guy could be a beast. And we saw just a little piece last night that said that's why you hold on to that guy and see if you can develop him, and definitely, and Taylor Gabriel, there's another one that came out of nowhere. Now, last week people are like, man, thank God we got that guy on our team. Otherwise we'd have had no offense going at all, So,
yeah.
But we'll see. You're right. It takes time. All right. We'll talk about the Browns next week. I'm going to give you this before I go. The Indians, I have labeled them officially earlier this week a team of destiny, which means it's in the books. It's in the books. They are the Team O destiny. They are going to win. It's in the stars. It doesn't matter what happens. You say what you want, man, but since the point a few weeks ago where we said, hit the road, here you go, get off the pot or keep going, you got to win 2 out of every 3 from here on out, they've done just that. And they're here they sit, man, in position to own this thing, man. But all joking about the destiny aside, man, where are you at with the Indians right now? Because they've won series, they've won 6 in a row, man. They have gotten themselves right here with your own destiny playing Kansas City and Detroit.
Yeah, you're right about that. There is a very admirable sort of lunch bucket mentality and performance that we've seen from this team in August. Like you said, 5 or 6 straight series now that they have taken 2 out of 3. They're not doing it real sexy. They haven't ripped off an 8-game winning streak, which is kind of what you'd expect with a streaky team like this, as they've been all year. You'd expect them to win 8 in a row and then lose 6 and do it that way. But no, they've been doing it with a lunch bucket. They win 2 out of 3. They win 2 out of 3. They win 1, they lose 1. They win 2, they lose 1. They don't string a whole bunch of victories together, but they don't go on a losing streak. And that's what they needed to do. Honestly, they should have. I wish they would have started this earlier. If they'd have leveled off this way in June, I think we'd be having a different conversation right now. But better late than never. And they are still in the hunt, either for the division or the wild card. Both are still there for the taking. They're essentially right where they were at Labor Day weekend a year ago. Believe it or not, they're more or less in the exact same position. And here we sit. So can they win 20 of 25? Go and have some kind of September like